this is the one that I've all been waiting for. So this is where I take all the stuff that I've been talking about in the last 8 videos and apply it to the two shonen comics, shonen manga that sparked this journey for me. One is Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, right? And the other is The Promised Neverland. Both were in Shonen Jump. Both started around the same time and ended around the same time. Promised Neverland has a writer and artist. It's a duo. And then Kimetsu no Yaiba has a single creator artist. Let's just jump right in. What do you say? So first of all, we're talking about ONI, okay? This is what I'm focusing on. There's the antagonists in both of the series are ONI, but also you have ONI who are on the side of the protagonists in both series. So it's taking a very interesting, more nuanced than at first glance look at the monster, the other. And so when I was reading these, it kind of occurred to me that there's something that these creators are trying to get at that I think is maybe pushing back a little bit against the typical Shonen Jump. The idea of what Shonen Jump, it's like you have the main character and he's always everything is friendship and loyalty and and these things are in these comics, of course, but it also I think takes a little bit more nuanced look at the bad guys. So first of all, let's look at it from the ONI. Okay, so physically they look a lot different than what we expect the ONI to look like. In this first slide, we can see that the ONI designs have been updated to be more in line with modern sensibilities. The comics that we looked at in my last video in some of the best ONI comics, these are kind of outdated visual representations of ONI, which for many would have kind of echoes of kids' stories, like fables and fairy tales. So not for more mature readers. So perhaps this visual updating is addressing some of that. Now, even though they look a lot different, do they share any of the, like, why use the name ONI at all? And so ONI being a almost perfect monster representation because they are so complex, they have a long history from various different sources, and so there's a lot of cultural use you can get out of them. Let's see if they share any attributes with traditional ONI. Okay, so first of all, they eat people. Okay, so in Yakusoku no, in the Promised Neverland, they have to eat people or they will lose their identity. They need to eat people to keep from reverting into some kind of animalistic state. So that's kind of an interesting update of the ONI, but it still keeps the eating people part. For Kimetsu no Yaiba, especially the ONI, in that world, they have to kill as many humans as possible in order to gain rank and get more powerful, so that they can live longer, which is basically the main bad guy. His thing is he wants to live longer, be immortal, and also be able to not suffer the effects of the sun, very much like a vampire. So why keep it ONI? That's the question, right? So it's still, there's other aspects. Like I mentioned in the last video that ONI have various different looks, different number of horns, different number of eyes, arms, whatever. In both of these comics, the Oni don't have one particular visual design. They're all over the place. There's lots of flexibility and freedom in these Oni designs. Um, there's Oni in Neverland that are more human-like, and there's ones that are more monsterific. In Yaiba, also the same. There are some that are very human-like, can even pass as human, and others that are very grotesque and very monsterific. They're a lot closer representation to what they are inside. You have the size aspect. Monsters tend to be large. Oni tend to be large. In Neverland, yes, you have huge, humongous Oni. In Kimetsu, there are different sizes, but they're really not that huge. So that's that's not as big of an aspect that's surviving there. In Neverland, you've got the fangs, you've got horns, and then in Kimetsu, you've got fangs. Some have horns, some don't. Many don't. Many do kind of represent a little bit like the traditional Oni look, but not every Oni has the horns. But they do have the fangs for the eating, the killing. So there's different number of eyes in Neverland, and there's different number of eyes in Kimetsu. You've got one eye, three eyes, whatever. In this one, you've got six eyes. You've got two eyes, one eyes, whatever. So different number of eyes. The ones in Neverland, they have the ability to, if they're damaged and they eat human flesh, they can rejuvenate, right? They can rejuvenate. In also the same with Kimetsu Oni, by drinking blood, eating flesh, whatever, they can rejuvenate. The weakness, though, in the Promised Neverland, Oni they have something like a soul, or something like just a core. Okay, it's a core, and it's behind their eyes. So that's why, like, they wear these masks that kind of protect their face and keep from people getting to their core. In the Oni, you also have a weakness, their head getting chopped off, very vampire-like, but it does echo the story of Shuten Doji and his head being lopped off by the heroes, but also the sun. The sun is also a big disadvantage for the Kimetsu Oni, and this is probably the most vampire-like aspect of them. Yes, so moving on very quickly, let's talk about, through the monster theory lens, what we're looking at. Okay, so I'm using the theses that I went through in the series of videos to specifically talk about different parts of the comic. So, for example, the monster's body is a cultural body, and I think this represents how in current Japanese society, even current at this time, that you have a lot of people who feel like helpless. They feel they don't have enough information. They don't feel they have enough power, enough agency. And so when Tanjiro is told that don't let someone else take your agency, don't just give it to them. I think this is something that is useful to be read into here, that it's important to kind of maintain control over your agency. And so that's Giyu that says that to Tanjiro. What Tanjiro does after that is he uses his imagination, comes up with a plan to take back his agency. When he uses the skills that he does have, which is using his axe, um, he's able to save Nezuko from being killed by Giyu. So, looking here, like this is something considered like a social problem, learned helplessness, basically. And so it's your own monster inside that you are growing that's keeping your fears alive, and you're afraid to even have agency, and to definitely afraid to combat that in yourself, which is stopping you from maintaining your agency. On the Neverland side, we see Emma also dealing with a similar problem. She feels like there's no way out, but she refuses to give up. And she says, like, if there's no place for us in this world, let's make our own place outside. And that's where everything starts for them to start seizing their own agency. It kind of, her imagination, the fact her ability to imagine that she can make such a future, ties directly into her taking action. And so both of these things occur in these comics, is that imagination for having different the idea to come up with different plans will lead directly to action. They both don't know exactly what's going to happen, but they know they have to move forward. Yes, the monster always escapes. Talking about the the monster that has been destroyed always finds a way back. It's like the return of the repressed, which is a sociological concept. Like some problems are harder to deal with, they never quite go away. Also, it's a psychological concept that your fears and your neuroses in yourself, it's a constant battle. You defeat them, they come back in different forms, you have to defeat them again. So looking at the Neverland panels here, you can see that the Oni in her world, they originally didn't have any set shape, but depending on what they ate, they became more similar to what they were eating. So this kind of adaptation makes it very hard to nail down exactly what a Oni is. So it's very hard to, to say exactly what a Oni is. This kind of adaptation from like animalistic all the way to cultured and having a society, this kind of growth is similar to the growth of the monster throughout history, how originally it was outside the borders, outside the barriers. It's just chaotic wildness to be kept out. And then it started to get more sophisticated. You're dealing with other people that you're calling monsters that you're trying to push out. And then you have the monster within yourself that you're trying to combat. So it gets it goes from civilization to society to locality to family to person, the individual. Uh, and so the monster has always existed, but has kind of continued to grow and advance as society or civilization advances. Um, the You have to have the Oni, basically. You need it. So that's another reason why it keeps coming back, because we need it. We need the ceremony. We need the festival. We need the onigoko, the playing tag. It's in these stories. It's like the continuous practice of pushing out the monster. This kind of ritual is important. So it's not just that we can't get rid of it, we also need it. So it makes it very easy for it to come back. This is kind of represented into the malleability of the Oni in Neverland, but also how many of the Oni in Kimetsu. The example here is the Oni that disappear into the darkness, but also as Tanjiro grows in strength and his and skill, the Oni he fights also have grown along with him, became more difficult. Into the monster is the harbinger of category crisis. There's a lot of category crises in both of these stories, and that's I think the revolutionary things about this comic is that they're pushing and breaking, weakening boundaries. Like there's a lot of characters that don't just easily fit into one category, including the Oni. One reason that things that threaten categories are considered monsters is because when we're faced with the unknown, faced with things we don't know, we try to fit them in some sort of category so that we can have some control over those things and over our reactions to those things. But a lot of monsters, their uh, ability to break through categories is built in because they're often a mix, a hybrid of different things. Like the Oni we have in both these series, they do have a lot of the characteristics of traditional Oni, but they've also got new characteristics and new designs. So they're already breaking boundaries. The Oni in Neverland, it says in this panel here to the left, they're Oni, they're called monsters, they're called devils, demons, gods, uh, and that they've had many names, right? So they can't fit within one name, one category. You've got Oni in this series, like Sonju and Mujika, that have made a conscious decision not to eat human flesh, and that they're still able to maintain their identity without doing so. So there's, you know, there's right there, they're already kind of breaking boundaries that even rules that are set within that world, they're breaking boundaries and rules. On the Kimetsu side, you've got Nezuko, who has a couple different forms when she's in full demon mode. When she demons out, she's quite formidable. Even and she's also much more mature and like almost sexy, as well as scary. But she also has a more childlike, innocent-looking form, which is much smaller and much more innocent looking. But we know that the fact that she has the ability to kind of move between those forms gives her a bit of agency, and also her ability to exist in sunlight also gives her an extra bit of agency that other Oni don't have. So she's also breaking boundaries within the established universe of that comic. So that's why these characters are so fascinating. And then you've got Muzan, the bad guy. He takes any kind of form without thought. He's a young boy. He's a handsome looking man. He's a very beautiful woman. He's whatever he needs to be. And the monster in plain sight is a fear that kind of came about in the modern age, along with things like terrorism, where we really don't know who the enemy is until they take some act or do some act which shows who they really are. This is, I think, a fear that's sometimes represented by the shape-shifting monster, the monster, the beast within, something like this. So you've got Muzan breaking gender barriers, breaking age barriers, and you've got, uh, Nezuko breaking different kinds of barriers, and Mujika breaking different kind of barriers. This ability itself, for somebody, your average person, might be quite scary, because some people are there. their identity or their confidence in themselves is based on understanding the world as a non-changeable thing. And so, things that are able to do to break out all beside out of their definitions can be quite scary. So let's move on. Thesis 4. All right. The monster dwells at the gate of difference. This is talking about like stepping out into the unknown world, facing the guardian at the gate, the monster at the gate, often the fear within yourself that you face in order to break through to the outside world, but at the same time, that that gate, that guardian at the gate is often your ignorance. And that's what's keeping you, your lack of imagination. And that's what's keeping you from entering into new worlds, new realms of possibilities. Once you are able to make it into that world, you're able to understand difference a lot better. And you can understand the monster. And you can, once it's been established that there's a connection, that there is a shared something, that you share something with the monster, it makes it a lot easier to break through into this world. So looking at let's see, Kimetsu, and well, we have on the left, okay, we've got some Kimetsu, some Promised Neverland. We have the people who can only see Oni as monsters and nothing else, you know. So you've got the character saying that, Oni are only good for killing, you know. They're ugly things that need to be destroyed. I can't wait to kill all the Oni, right? And then on the right, you have people who are able to see Oni as something else, as more than just monsters. And so, for example, you have Tanjiro, who's in this panel, the double panel where he's in the very same pose as the Oni. You can see that he's making that connection, that they're not as different as, first seen, and then you have Emma here who considers Mujika a friend. She's seeing her as more than Oni. And then you have the character in Neverland who was raised by an Oni, so what allows these differences to occur? What allows this viewpoint to exist? Part of it is being able to recognize the humanity in the Oni. So if you're the humans that have seen the humanity in the Oni, they are often ones who have some relationship with the Oni. Okay, so for example, the little girl who was raised by an Oni, she actually has a filial, there's the father-daughter relationship, so that allows that link. You've got Tanjiro is brother of Nezuko. You can see that they're both, the way that this panel shows like the both sides of the bamboo, this barrier that's kind of keeping her from attacking him, is, you can see them looking to each other's eyes. There's that connection, that that brother sister connection that allows him to see her as not just a monster. And then of course you have Emma and Mujika becoming true friends. This relationship allows her to see not just Mujika, but all Oni as possible friends. You see? So this reminds me of a personal story. My parents, they lived next door to a gay couple who were kind of the the guardians of the neighborhood. They kind of kept their eye on things, and they showed my parents the ins and outs of antiquing, and they my parents really developed a good relationship with them. And what that did was it allowed my very conservative father to see gay men as more than just the image that he had before that point. He wasn't just those two are good guys, but all the rest. No, he was like, he could see that the beliefs that he had beforehand weren't uh, weren't as set in stone as he thought they were. He showed some growth there. Uh, so I put a little note here on the bottom of this slide saying that monsters' actions are not necessarily destructive. Sometimes they're deconstructive. In other words, they are destabilizing the ideas that we have about monsters. They're destabilizing the ideas we have about our own culture and the rules and the reality that we have kind of accepted. And so, it happens very early on in Kimetsu, because you have the Nezuko Tanjiro relationship, and that's a big cornerstone. And that starts very early in the story. The friendship with Mujika develops a little bit later in The Promised Neverland. Yet until then, you yourself are really like, oh, screw these Oni, man. They're awful. They're horrible, eating kids and stuff. But you can see that these kind of personal relationships allow them to kind of break through and see through the processes which put these people in Oni into different camps, kept Oni as the enemy, kept humans as the enemy to the Onis, when in fact there is a possibility, not everybody, but there is a possibility for them to work together, live together. Okay, so, and that's what the monster does. All right, thesis number 5. All right, the monster polices the border of the possible. It's the in monster theory, it states very clearly that in Jeffrey Jerome Cohen's theory, that like the monster represents chaos, represents the lack of borders, the lack of rules. But what's interesting about it, about Japanese monsters, is that this doesn't necessarily apply in that way, because the Oni in both of these series, it tends to be very ordered. Um, but still there are things about both of these comics which threaten what we consider the possible. Okay. So for example, we tend to want an easily understandable, we want to know who we are, what our job is, what we're here to do, and then just do it. In other words, we want to be told what we should be doing. And the good thing about this is that you don't have to worry about who am I, what am I here to do, if somebody can tell you exactly what that is. So we kind of tend to lean on this kind of explanation of our existence. But what that does is that we are giving our agency to somebody else. So that's the negative part. It's a lot less scary, but at the same time, it's a lot less free. So in the modern world, kids are a lot more aware of what's going on in the world. It's a lot easier for them to get jaded. So they don't have the full trust in adults and in parents that perhaps earlier generations were afforded, like automatically. Now that trust, uh, can be easily lost, and not necessarily by the fault of the parent or society. It's just that there's a lot of information going on in the world, and we tend to give out information based on the level of the person we're talking to. But obviously, a little kid, you cannot explain to a 2-year-old about white lies. That's something that you have to wait until they're a little bit older and explain that sometimes there is the kind of lie that you do in order not to hurt someone's feelings or not to make a situation worse or terrible. So, it's all about scale and being ready for that complexity is the thing. And so in both series, we have a suddenly complex world that these characters who aren't ready for it are thrust into. And that's kind of similar to that losing your innocence, losing your trust in so-called reality, or the reality that you've been told. I went through not one moment. I went through several gates of my reality being threatened, and me being able to take kind of an objective look and see that the reality that I thought existed was actually not the reality as I learned or as I uh, to be. Observed to be is actually probably more correct. So this kind of fear of losing those crutches, of losing those safeguards, is reflected in both of these series. In Kimetsu, you have the one Oni who is able to manipulate space. You've got another one who manipulates time, space, and so she's made this very complex uh, palace, which doesn't obey typical laws of gravity and space. So it's chaotic, right? And chaos is the monster. It's the bad. Um, it's like we like to have a little bit of constriction. We like to have some rules, some walls that constrict us so that it's not completely free. When we're able to go every single direction, this can be quite scary unless you have a very strong sense of who you are. So, uh, so in the Promised Neverland, you have the one uh, Oni who is existing in this other dimension where there's no up, there's no down, there's like time seems to be malleable, time and space. And talking about the how the seven walls, the truth of the seven walls are the limits of physicality, something like this. Now, so what happens when you're faced with this kind of fear is that you start to look for the simple answers, right? So you have this one character in The Promised Neverland, you see at the bottom right, who thinks that by killing all the Oni, it's going to make everything easier. And this kind of reductivism, this, looking for the simple answer, uh, is often what people who are afraid do. And this is what we see often with uh, conservative politicians, not just conservative politicians, but we often see people who are doing the fear mongering. They are providing very simplistic, reductive answers like our enemy is this. Uh, and so this is what we need to fight against. And as long as we can destroy or push out these folks, everything's going to be great. So we've seen this throughout history. Now, when we're going back to the borders of the possible again, making it into like outside those borders gives you a better view, a better understanding of what's inside and what really is so-called abnormal or uh, dangerous or uh, not good. So you can see how the inside needs to grow, needs to change. So, for example, here, oh yes, this is one of my favorite lines in Kimetsu when Tanjiro says, "If you can't tell the difference between a good or a bad Oni, then you shouldn't be in the position of being one of the Hashira, one of the pillars, one of the main hunters of Oni." In other words, don't reduce, don't simplify, oversimplify when complexity is needed. On the other hand, like with the Promised Neverland, you see that Emma and her friend here have the ability to create whatever they want, and that power can be scary, but uh, they, because of their experience, because of their becoming more sophisticated, they are actually able to imagine a world which doesn't have specific form, but also isn't scary to them. Thesis 6, the fear of the monster is really a kind of desire. Now, in this, we have Daki for the Kimetsu side. Daki is very attractive female. It's not just that it's how she's designed, right? But she's very invested in the fact that she's beautiful, and she puts a lot of stock in that. At the same time, things that are ugly, she wants to abject, she wants to push away, but at the same time, the person closest to her in the world is considered very ugly, and um, but she's kind of, it's a contradiction, they're both Oni, they both still need each other, so they have that humanity going on, but they are, you know, uh, they've kind of taken on that role of Oni, and like she became just a bigger extension of what she thought she was, which was a beautiful creature, but inside maybe she's not as beautiful as she thinks she is. On the other hand, her brother became a huge extension of how he thought the world saw him, as an ugly, um, abjected thing, when maybe his dedication to his sister is not very ugly at all, could also actually be a beautiful thing. Um, the desire that these brother and sister have, is to become stronger and to become higher on the level. Uh, but actually, though, what we see in this comic is that uh, as they get higher, they actually have more pressure on them and they actually have less freedom. So it's kind of an interesting side point, because usually when we think of the monster has freedom to act in many different ways. But this particular comic, the stronger the monster is, the less freedom it has, which is a very interesting point, uh, and not necessarily something that applies to every comic, but it seems to be very important to this particular shonen comic. The last thesis, the monster stands at the threshold of becoming, and talking about how the monsters are us, and the monsters are creations, and the monsters are creating us. And so some of the important parts about this include, like Frankenstein. He comes back with knowledge of himself and asks, like, why was I created? Like he comes back with a more sophisticated look on the world, a lot more questions about his existence. This is something you see in Parasite, uh, which they're the monsters. It comes across as a very easy to understand splatter, they call it, or like this bloody horror comic, but eventually it becomes more of a psychological uh, comic, asking very specific questions about existence and things and the meanings of existence. So let's look at these particular monsters. You have near the end of Kimetsu, you have Tanjiro very much becoming monster-like. You have many of the Hashira, the pillars, taking on monster-like appearance, taking on like you have the one character who actually ingests Oni in order to gain the power of the Oni. You have the humans who are becoming more monster-like, right? But you also have the monsters sometimes becoming more human-like. But still talking about the humans as monsters in Promised Neverland, Norman very clearly calls out Mama here as she's an Oni. Mama is an Oni. She's a demon because of internally what she's doing, right? And then here you have a panel from Neverland of an Oni crying, being filial. There's so many instances of the line being crossed, right? One particular point, the need for strength seems to be very, very important to a lot of the characters. In Kimetsu, the need for maintaining their identity is important. In Neverland, so in Kimetsu, you have a lot of the characters, they either became pillars, Hashira, or they became Oni, and it's always like the ones who are desperate to fill some void, something that they assume that they are missing in themselves, that they often turn to the dark side and become the Oni. And they do terrible things in order to get the approval of Muzan and to gain other ranks, etc. And then you have like the pillars themselves. They also, because they feel there's something missing that they need to strengthen, so they do this really hard training to become the pillar. And then their purpose becomes the destruction of Oni. So it's both sides, they're fulfilling their desires has actually like been kind of warped into a destructive function. So that's an interesting parallel. Another one of my favorite parts is when this character here, you have to excuse me not suddenly remembering everybody's name because it's been a while since I've read both series. But she asks this other character, why do you want to be strong? This is something that I felt is really kind of railing against the what happens in like Dragon Ball and series like this, where the characters keep getting stronger and stronger until they're dead, they're strong gods, they're gods, whatever. And they just why? What's the purpose? And it's all because it's insecurity, right? It's insecurity. It's you don't want your agency to be stolen from you. You don't But if your only purpose is to get stronger just to protect yourself, it seems kind of like an empty pursuit to me. And I think that this is kind of attacking that idea a little bit by putting this in there, because it's not a strong story point necessarily, but I was, it really kind of hit me. Is it worth it, what they're going through in order to become stronger? Right. So that's it. That's the seven theses. Now I'm going to tell you some of my conclusions. I think that both of these comics kind of, they threaten, they challenge uh, our images of reality, of truth, and that they make it clear that, that maybe not everything in the world is set in stone, and that is a scary thing, and it's not easy to live in such a world. There's people make scapegoats, people reduce, they simplify, they monsterize what they think is the problem. Then, these processes of scapegoating, reductionism, monsterization, um, is something that can be read in these comics. And that's one thing I find them uh, fascinating. But what's special also about these comics is that the main characters, Tanjiro and Emma, one thing that they share in common, they realize that there's not just one answer. There's not just one solution, and that they know that, they believe that, and so they use their imagination to full effect while taking some kind of action in order to find their own way in the world, their own way to live. And they both are very much concerned with how they live. It's not a means, nothing is just a means to an end. How they actually fulfill their goals is also important to them. It's both of these comics can tell us that when you are scared of something, when you hate something, uh, it's not necessarily something that's in that other, you know it's often something that you have inside yourself that you're afraid of and that you hate. So I think through monster theory applied to these two comics, we can kind of get another idea, another look at the other, and see them closer to uh, the other as ourselves, and representing ourselves and our fears. Um, One thing interesting I found out about applying this to these Japanese works is that, like, the Oni, which is like a very traditional, very representational monster of Japan, uh, it's, you can't cut it off from Japanese culture or Japanese history. It's very strong connection, and so in order to understand Japanese culture, uh, it's a it's something that can't be ignored. I think understanding the Oni gives us insight into that. In both series, you've got the main characters who are able to look at Oni as something more than a monster, uh, and the Oni have been complicated enough that they still maintain their Oniness, right? But they can also represent current uh, current difficulties, current problems, current social anxieties, etc. Um, and then these can be kind of read through monster theory, and that's what I found incredibly fascinating. Anything that allows you to look at a comic from a different way and gain some perspective about yourself, that is a good filter, and it's also a good comic as far as I'm concerned. That's why I think both of these comics shouldn't be simplified. It shouldn't be reduced to, oh, it's another Shonen Jump comic or animation. I found this experience very, very satisfying, and I hope that some of you who've made it through the end, if you've only watched this video and you want a little bit more background about the theses that I've been talking about, please check out the other videos. If you want more content like this, please like, please comment, please subscribe. I will be moving back to more manga related content that you've seen before, but I might every once in a while add some extra commentary about what I'm showing you and what I'm thinking about based on the ideas that I've come across here. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate you guys. You've really allowed me to grow through this channel. When I first started teaching manga history, it was very, there was a lot for me to study because I'm not initially a historian. I'm more a cultural theorist. So, but I think being able to have both kind of perspectives is very valuable. And one of the reasons I made this channel is so that I would actually have some structure to my looking into the history and the cultural things. So I really appreciate any of you who have come along for the ride. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the funny papers.